Well, it's wonderful to be back together with you all again. I'm sorry that we're still Zooming, but progress is being made. Lots of people are getting their shots, and the amount of space that we're going to be allowed at Magnolia Greens is expanding month by month. But before we get to that, for our May meeting, we are going to be having a wonderful talk about succulents. So it seems that everybody is into succulents all of a sudden. So if you're planning on planting any succulents, either in your garden or in containers, it's going to be a wonderful program with Bree Arthur. Bree did a program for us in December, and succulents happen to be one of her specialties, so that's going to be great. In June, we have our garden stroll for members only, which is, we'd hope to open it up for the public, but we can't do that quite yet. So it'll be kind of a private party. We are asking that everybody wear masks. It is the second Thursday in June, which is June 9th, and it'll be 9:30 to 1. The committee will be getting out some announcements and some other information for you. We are going to ask that you wear your masks, and every member is allowed to bring one guest. So that will be great. I know Jolene is getting her garden ready, right? Yep, she's nodding, she is. And I know the other gardeners are also getting their gardens ready. So that, that will be great. We'll be back at Magnolia Greens in July, the second Thursday in July. And we've decided to add the August meeting this year, even though we usually don't meet in August. But since we've been apart for so long, we wanted to have at least some time where we get back together, get reacquainted, have a time to chat, and also have a program. So that's the basic schedule where we are right at this moment. I'm hoping nothing will change with Magnolia Greens and that this will be clear sailing from now on. Today, I'm really excited to be having Nina Brown from the Stone Garden in Wilmington. If you have not been there, I'm going to tell you to go before she does, because it's a wonderful place. And she's going to be talking about all the wonderful things that you can do with stone and many other things in your garden. It's not just piles of stone that you get to look at when you go there. There are all kinds of interesting things. I'm going to let Nina tell you her story rather than introduce her, because it's an interesting one. And so I'm going to share this, have Nina share her screen and unmute her, and we'll be set to go. I'm sorry, Nina's going to unmute herself. I'm not going to unmute her. Also, if you have any questions, if you would hold them to the end, we'll just open it up for questions then. Okay. Nina, are you ready? Nina, you need to unmute yourself. Click the little microphone.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay, now if I start the video, you can't see my screen right now, right?
No, we can see the screen.
Oh, great. And do you see yourselves on the screen or just the top slide?
Just the slide.
Oh, excellent.
The presenter view.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let me put this in the right mode.
There we go.
Okay, so you can see that in full without anything else in the way?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, excellent. Well, hello, I'm sorry about that technical difficulty. Sue's been so nice in helping me this morning. We've actually had 2 practice runs because I hate getting screwed up in the beginning of a presentation. Anyway, I wanted to thank you all for letting me do this presentation for you. How many of you have actually been to the Stone Garden before?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. I can't hear all of you, but that's wonderful. I started the Stone Garden 22 years ago. I was actually unemployed. I had been fired from a job with the city of Wilmington as a planner, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my future when we had a Hurricane Bertha hit. And I was living downtown. I had just built a house downtown in the historic district, and the large tree that made up the entire backyard, it was an oak tree, fell in the storm and basically scraped the side of the house that had just been planted but didn't bust any windows. And so I was left with this big tree in my backyard, which got taken out piece by piece down a side alley that was only 3.5 feet wide, which was interesting. But long story short, I had a hole in the ground once everything was gone, and I decided to make a pond. That was my first experience with stone. So I decided that at that point that I would start looking into a business selling building materials, and a stone yard happened to be for sale on the other side of town, and that's where I got the idea. But I wanted it to be more than a stone yard. I wanted it to include garden ornaments as well and mulch, because I had to redo my entire backyard. So my statues were broken when the tree fell, my pathways were destroyed. Everything was a complete redo. So I was starting from scratch myself and starting the business from scratch, which kind of rolled into motion, had a mind of its own. And before I knew it, I was opening up a stone store. So here I am 22 years later. We have, we moved from our original location. This is what we're going to talk about today. We're now at 5726 Market Street, which is near MLK Parkway and Market Street. I'm thinking that you all know sort of where that is in Wilmington. If you're wondering why we have the logo of Border Collies on everything, you can see down here, it's because since I opened, I have always had Border Collies at the store with me between 1 and 6, and do a lot of Border Collie rescue. So that's why we have the logo that we have. If you keep noticing it, it's got a dog in it, and that's why. This was our previous location. We were at the intersection of Military Cutoff and Market Street. I don't know how many of you were up there, but we were in front of Mr. Nixon's Oysters. And we were in that, our office was in that old house, and it was kind of a mishmash of things. Didn't really design anything. It just kind of happened a little at a time. And now we're in a new location and actually had time to plan the display gardens, which was wonderful because everything looks like it was meant to be. That's the arch into our inspiration garden. And this is just a picture of a project that we worked on recently. And it kind of just shows where we've come from, because if I was to show you my first picture that I ever took of the stone yard and a project we were involved in, it would have been nothing looking like that. At the end of the talk, I want to speak to you about doing things yourself versus hiring a professional. So just kind of keep that in the background if you have questions on that at the end, because certainly as much as you want to do projects, sometimes there are projects bigger and heavier than you're able to do. So as far as starting from scratch, this is what the new location looked like when we got there. It was one big parking lot, and it was basically a fenced in area that we ripped the concrete out of. And so that's what we started with. You can see right there with basically just a fenced area of nothing. These two gentlemen were the ones that built our arch. And so this is sort of phase 2, where you can see the back of the stone arch and then into the garden where we only have one sand pit. This is how the garden looks today, the lower picture. And so it's really changed a lot and has shown me that it's quite possible to do a lot of these projects, some on your own and some with the help of some professionals. This was the picture of the other side of our store. There was a courtyard there that was not very attractive. And so it was also made into a display garden. So I wanted to talk to you about hardscaping, which is just another word for saying the guts of the garden and why we do hardscaping. So here are several reasons why, and we're going to go through each one individually. So the first one is that, excuse me, before I start, hardscaping can be with many different materials. We sell concrete, pavers, and stone, but this talk is going to be just stone in the garden. And why do I like to sell stone? Because it has a timeless quality. This picture was actually taken by me about 5 minutes after they finished doing this job. So it looks like it's been there forever, and it really was installed 5 minutes previous to me taking the picture. So the first reason to do hardscaping is to mark the boundaries of your space. It's basically to say, okay, this is my room. The other thing is that it creates structure in your garden. So if you were starting from scratch, and I imagine a lot of you were when you moved into Brunswick Forest, it basically sets the structure, tells people where you want them to go and where you don't want them to go, what you want them to look at and what you don't want them to look at. So here's that job when it's finished. The other thing that hardscaping does is it sets the direction or flow of where you want people to move. And you can see on this pathway that it's not a straight line. Mason once said to me, nature abhors a straight line. And you'll see in a lot of projects, unless they're a formal like English garden, that there are a lot of curves to the hardscaping. Another reason to do hardscaping is to provide the edging or borders for your beds, or to create a focal point. So the trick is pairing hardscaping with landscaping, or softscaping as it's often called. And if this was just a picture of just the hardscaping, it would just be cold and unattractive. It's the landscaping, the plants, the flowers, the trees that really make the stone come to life and not look stark. So it's a combination of both. So when I started the store, I knew nothing about stone. It was a bit of an adventure, but I had some mentors. And what I came up learning first was that there were words associated with the different types of stone. And when a lot of folks come to a stone yard for the first time, it can be intimidating because it has its own vocabulary. So we're going to look at some of these styles of stone today. And I'll show you pictures of what they look like in application. So the first one on here is flagstone. Flagstone refers to the size of the pieces. A lot of people ask when they come in or call on the phone, do you have any slate? And I think what they're trying to say is, do you have pieces large enough to walk on? And often they're saying, do you have pieces that are irregular in shape, not dimensional? So when you walk into a stone yard, if you want to sound like you know what you're talking about, don't ask for slate. So here's one style of a flagstone, simply pieces big enough to walk on. You can see what it looks like in the palette on the left and what it looks like down in application on the right. This is a Pennsylvania flagstone or Pennsylvania bluestone, and it's probably my most popular product. There's also circular stones. We have these circular steppers that make a perfect little easy stepping stone pathway. And then there's dimensional stone. That's a blue stone right there. And it's often referred to as patterned cut. So the two types of flagstone are pattern cut, just squares and rectangles, and then irregular, or I call them puzzle pieces. And the reason that they're referred to as pattern cut is because they literally fall into a specific pattern. You can see this is a French pattern that's often used when you put down travertine. And you can see on the right-hand side, the different size pieces. There's a certain number of each size piece that goes a certain place, and that's the result. So basically, you can see there's a couple different types of flagstone. Instead of going through each one of these, which would take a long time, I'm basically going to jump us over to the website. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this, but it's a great place to learn about stone because it's all broken down quite clearly. And so if you give me just a second, I'm going to jump over there. And there's that same arch that you saw before. When you come to the website, this take a tour button will show you a whole video of the garden. And it kind of lets you know what the store looks like before you get there. And here are some of the products that we sell. So we're going to be talking about stone. We also sell garden art and material supplies like sand and gator dust. So if I go over here to stone, this is what we would be talking about for wall stone or field stone. Is a dry stack wall is how it's referred to. And then here's some of the other vocabulary. So veneer is a reference to anything that's a thin stone that gets applied to a house or building or fireplace or wall. You can see down here at the bottom, there's an artificial veneer on the left-hand side. Most people refer to it as cultured stone. And on the right-hand side, there's paneled stone, which are real pieces of stone, but you can see that they've been sliced thin. And so any kind of thin stone that's going up vertically is referred to as a veneer. All right, let's see if we can go back. We talked about dimensional flagstone, so there's your patterned bluestone again. Here's irregular flagstone. This is the wallstone picture that we just looked at a minute ago. And here's a picture showing fieldstone. And the only difference is that the fieldstone has a weathered look on the outside of it. It's literally set in the field for millions of years, as opposed to wallstone, which has a sharp look to it. See, pull one up here. So this would be a picture of wallstone versus fieldstone. It's just a completely different look, but you can see how the edges of the stone are weathered or sharp. Another product that we sell are pebbles or creekstone. You can see they come in different sizes. Usually they start at about 3/8 of an inch, and this is referred to as pea gravel. This is like the next size up. This would be 3/4 inch. And this is used often in place of a mulch, where you're basically going to put down pebbles instead of mulch. So you only have to do it once. And this is some of the selection that we have at the store that you can always come back to. We have these displayed all over the ground so that you can see what they look like in application. So that would be creekstone or decorative pebbles. Another item we sell are boulders, which basically are just big chunks of stone. This particular boulder comes out of Idaho, and it's called turquoise quartzite. It's my favorite stone, and we just recently got a whole truckload in. So if you like the color, come visit, because we have a couple aisles of this stone now in all different sizes. You can see though that we sell boulders of different shapes and colors. different uses. You can see this one over here, which is the golf cart, the putting range that this gentleman made in his backyard. Whereas this one, they use boulders to put a waterfall together. A lot of these pictures are from the Azalea Garden Tour, which unfortunately we didn't have this year because of COVID, but we will be having next year. And if you haven't been, I hope you do come on it. It's really an amazing event, and you can see a lot of ideas to get your mind going for doing something different at home. So that's boulders. Another product is what we would call steps and caps. And so this material is actually, it's bluestone like we've seen before, but it's fabricated. So it's cut into and sliced thinly to be used for steps and capstones. And these pieces of stone that are long like this are referred to as treads because they're often step treads, but they can also be used for other things like hearthstones and bar tops. But here are some examples of different kinds of steps and capstones. And if any of you have questions after this display, I'm happy to go back to any of these pictures so you can just kind of let me know what might interest you. So that's steps and caps. Another would be fire features. So we have hearthstones. You see that same stone that's called the tread is here on the hearthstone, and it's also cut. We fabricate them into mantelpieces. Also grills, grill cabinets, and grill tops is the same type of bluestone, and it's used here for a seating wall as well. And we have several different displays at the store of different fire features. We also sell fire pit kits if you wanted to do it yourself. And you can see how many different materials they are, different thicknesses, different dimensions, and really completely different looks. Even on the same thing, even on the same fireplace, it can look completely different depending on what type of stone you use. We talked before about setting the boundaries of your yard or setting a border for your space. This is cobblestone, sometimes referred to as Belgian block. And you can see how it's retaining the soil or mulch on this side, and it's giving the stone a definite edge on the other side. And there's different materials for doing that as well. You can see you can use small boulders to do it. This is actually bluestone cut into a square. On this one, we've taken material that's been basically chopped into this shape. On this side, it's retaining a garden bed, and on this side, it's defining the edge of the pathway. Here's another one that's defining the edge of the pathway and holding in the mulch and soil. So edging is a very popular one as far as gardeners go. And then we've covered all of those. So I just want to take you back to the home page. That's a lot of fieldstone right there. It's laid out in a grid so that you can easily see what kind of project you want to do. In other words, if you wanted to build or purchase a fountain, we do custom fountains. Like this one here is a triple basalt fountain. It's called the disappearing fountain. Well, the others are sort of classical fountains, a tiered fountain, a glazed fountain. These fountains right here are called spillover fountains because it literally comes down to the ground. Other fountains can be called self-contained fountains like this one, because the water just recirculates. It's contained in the bowl, so it never spills over the bottom ball into a basin. Anyway, all this is here for you to look at and get ideas for projects that you can do or things you can purchase at the store. We do have delivery and placement for things like fountains. We sell mulch and pine straw in different colors and textures. This is my current border collie, Willow. She's a blue merle. You can't really tell there, but she has a lot of gray in her. A lot of the other ones I've had have been black and whites. But here's a grid that shows you the colors of the mulch that we sell and the pine straw. And we can help you with this calculator figure out how much you need. As far as I have a space that's 10 by 15, we'll ask you how many inches deep you want to put it. And this will calculate how many cubic yards we'll sell to you, which is one scoop out of that loader bucket. And we do deliver. So that's another product that is related to the garden. This is more practical, the soil, sand, and gravel. Gravel, again, is stone. You can see the pebble pieces right here. Some of it is broken down finer than others. So you can see basically this product is the same as all these other products in all the different sizes. It's just crushed a different amount and sent through a screener a different amount, but it's still stone. And you can use it for a lot of different purposes, from just building a pathway to putting down a driveway. And then these are the other decorative stones that we looked at before. So all of that is in two different sections. This is called a super sack here on the side. And you'll have to let me know, Sue, how I'm doing on time. But you can, what do we got? I can't hear you.
You're good, Nina.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, we can put some of this material into a sack for you and deliver it that way so we don't dump it out of the loader and make a mess on your driveway. We looked at different pathways and patios. Again, you can see the difference between the flagstone, not the slate, that's in either dimensional, either in a pattern or in a random display. You can see my photographer likes to take pictures of animals. She has them in almost a lot of, every time she takes a household picture, she always gets the animal in. And this right here, I can't play it right now for you, but if you go back and play it, is 3 4-year-olds that are going to build a patio in 30 seconds. It's one of our commercials and it's really funny. All meant to be very humorous. We have one on the mulch page where they take over the equipment in the mulch yard. And we also have one on the water garden page where they build a pond. So here are those same kids. And they've put together this waterfall in 30 seconds. So it's meant to be motivational, because if they can do it, we can too. Here's some other pictures of water gardens. So there's many different applications you can use with stone. And you can see the different purposes of it, again, as a border, as a focal point, as something that's telling you where you should walk or sit or stand. And I'd be happy to talk to you about any of these different materials. Otherwise, you can see basically it's a grid and you can check out all the different things that we sell. The fountains, most of the ones that we sell, the fountains and the garden art, are cast stone. So they have stone pebbles and dust mixed in with the concrete, makes them a lot stronger. And then if you want to, you're welcome to join our newsletter. We send out one every month. It has coupons. You can see what they look like in our portfolio. And this is another place where you can see people do their own projects or they have a professional do them. So this is Kathy Poyos, who's on the Cape Fear Garden Club, wanted to build a flower bed for her. Anyway, you can see the different steps from start to finish to when she gets done. So there's both do-it-yourself projects in here, and there's also people that have hired someone to do a project. Let's see if I can get back out of there. And probably I will leave it there. If any of you have questions, especially questions about how you would go about either hiring a contractor, which we have a referral network for, or for doing a project yourself. And that's my home screen. I'll go down here. And does anybody have any questions or answers or things they want to comment on? If you want to unmute yourselves.
If you have any question, feel free to unmute yourself. I saw Randy had a question in the chat. Would you like to ask it, Randy?
Yeah, I wrote it, but maybe you can't see it. I'm wondering, I have the original concrete screened-in patio that the builder built, and it's just plain ugly stained concrete, like stained as in oil spots and drips from pots. So can you cover concrete with stone, or would you have to rip out a concrete patio to start fresh?
Very good question. So the answer is either. In some cases, you can cover the concrete, especially with a thinner stone. Back to the website here for a second. I'm trying to get out of this page. Trying to find an example. Can you guys see where I need to close out of this? What I'm trying to do is get out of the portfolio screen. There we go. Okay.
There you go.
So if we went back to patios and pathways, for instance, this is an example of a front porch that had concrete on it. It's resurfaced with stone and then extended the walkway, which wasn't there at all, in pavers. In other cases, it's not possible, and you just basically need to have it broken up, what you do have, and start fresh. And a lot of it depends on whether or not how that patio hits the house. Does the patio you have hit like the back door?
Yes.
Okay, so the key is if you were to put stone down, if the stone was between, say, 1 inch and 2 inches, how would that hit the door frame?
Oh, because the
Door
door
sill.
is, yeah, the door is raised up. You have to step down actually into the patio. So
Perfect. So that gives you a lot more options. If it didn't, then you couldn't put it up any higher because the bottom of the door was sitting on the current concrete. You wouldn't be able to, you'd have to tear up what's there.
and then do you do that, or or you have contractors that you refer?
We do, we have a referral network that I've been working on for about 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know what kind of project you want to do, we can recommend all different kinds of contractors to do the work for you. If you come and tell us what you want to do or a picture of something like what you want to do, we can send out a mason or landscaper to bid the job and give you an estimate, and then you can hire them directly. We don't do any of the installation ourselves.
Could you answer one more question? If a small space like 10 by 20 feet, do you recommend pattern cut or irregular cut, or does it not matter?
That's a good question. My favorite gardens are small gardens. I just think they have real charm to them. Plus they can look beautifully filled up with not a lot of material. But your question about the pattern cut, let's go over here, versus the irregular stone. Here's our pattern cut here. People usually use the dimensional stone, the squares and rectangles, in a more formal setting. So a lot of folks, and this isn't a rule, but a lot of folks will use this, say, as a pathway coming up to a front door, where they might use an irregular stone for a more casual setting, or something like a backyard patio. Now, like I said, that's not a rule, and you'll definitely have people do this on their front porch and dimensional in their backyard. But typically, people who do the dimensional stone are wanting it to look a little bit more formal, or for a little more formal garden. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. It might be silly.
There's no silly questions.
Oh, I think this might be. Is there such a thing as a faux boulder? In other words, a boulder that looks like a boulder, but it's not actual stone?
Good question, not stupid question.
Thank
And the
you.
answer is yes.
Oh,
Very
There
good.
are boulders
look at
that
that.
are artificial,
We
and
can get
most of them are
this.
sold as pump covers to hide something in your front yard that doesn't look so good, or to
okay.
keep something from freezing. I don't particularly sell them because there's lots of different sizes and shapes, but I do recommend a brand called Decora, because they're the most natural looking. Some of the boulders look really bald
Okay.
and just fake and shiny when you see them. But this particular company will do rocks that look very natural. So, you know, not with the moss on it, but something like these. So it could
Okay.
be boulder, and then basically usually it's hollow underneath. Some of them are insulated and some of them are not. If you're in Brunswick County, the hardware store on 904, I think it's Coastal Hardware, carries that brand.
Okay.
If you're in Wilmington, there's a couple different places. We have a short cheat sheet. If you want to send an email, I'd be happy to send you the cheat sheet of who sells that kind of thing.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm trying.
If you have other questions, you can definitely write an email from the website. Anything you might want to know or questions you might have. This is where we're located in Wilmington. So Market Street intersects with Eastwood Road, which is Martin Luther King Parkway. So if you're coming from Brunswick County, you just come over the Isabel Home Bridge, you'd wind up here on Market Street, make a left, and this is Toyota right here. We're the next building up.
I
I
need a-
have a question.
Okay, Susan, go ahead.
We moved into a resale, and there's a path of flagstone with this very small pebble rock that it's set in. Is
Mhm.
there an average period of time that you need to replace sort of the gravel around the flagstone, or is it you just sort of fill in as needed?
The biggest factor is whether or not you have some kind of edging, because usually when things disappear, they're falling off to the sides. So we have a number of different options for edging, including this aluminum edging, which bends and it's powder coated brown, so you can't really see it like you would something shiny and silver. This is a small gravel in here in between the stones. Is this the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, and I mean, I think there was originally, there was some kind of edging, but just as mulch is built up on either side, it's you don't see it as much, and it seems like the gravel kicks out, or it just has crushed down over time. And I didn't know if that's something. The stones are firm to step on, the individual stepping stones, but it's just more from an aesthetic to fill in. Is that all you do is just fill in? You don't have to reset the stones.
That's a good question. So the stones are set many different ways depending on how professional you want to be. So some people will just basically put the stone on the ground and fill in and around it with the gravel or decorative pebbles. That's kind of the plunk and run sort of installation. On the other hand, a professional mason would probably dig down, say 6 inches, put in a bed of either sand or rock dust or this little baby gravel. And then the rest of it would be the stone that gets placed. You can see it's sort of placed into it. It's not just thrown on top of it. So anything in between there is legitimate. A lot of folks, when they're building pathways, will put down, they'll maybe dig down 3 inches, and they'll allow 1.5 inches or 1 inch for the stone, and then 1.5 inches for the underlayment, the gravel that goes underneath it. The joints are totally up to you. You can fill them in with anything, any kind of pebble and moss, baby mondo. The key thing is this border, because otherwise that's when the pebbles get into grass, or the pebbles get into beds, or the mulch gets into the pebbles. And that's the most frustrating part of doing either a pathway or a patio. Sometimes you can just use, landscaping, but you can see here, this is done really evenly. So the patio, there's not a big jump up to where the mulch is going to spill down. But the answer to your question is basically, you can do the gravel in combination with the base of this material. So you could use the same material, and that way you wouldn't have to buy a separate material for the interior here for the joints. Or you could underlay this with something strong, like sand, or we call it rock dust, and then choose a decorative pebble that you want to use. Let's see if I can find one. All right, in this case, this gentleman has used big boulders as his border, and he's used plant material and mulch between the joints. So basically the answer is there's different ways of doing it. There's more legitimate and less legitimate, and the joints are just another option. So when you're picking out something for a pathway or a patio, you want to think about 3 things. You want to think about the stone that you're going to see, the flagstone. You want to think about the base underneath it. You want to think about what you're going to put in the joints, and then what you're going to put on the border. And in some cases, you can get away with having, say mulch that's well seated, so it's not going to spill onto it. Like this is raised here, so if he didn't have this boulder, everything would fall onto the pathway. But like I said, I have plenty of people that just plunk down stones, and there's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, there's different materials you can fill in with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. We have an aggregate driveway,
Mhm.
that looks pretty dirty in spots. Do you recommend a certain way to clean that or a product?
Is it, when you say aggregate, is it small, like rounded pebbles or more like a gravel?
I think it's more rounded pebbles. I guess in cement, or I don't know what they use exactly, but it's definitely pebbles. And I think that if you use a power washer too hard on it, you'll maybe cause some of them to come up. But, you know, it has, it's dirty in spots, and I guess it's just dirt. It's 7 years old. So I guess the dirt has just packed in there. So around the pebbles, I was just wondering, is there a product that you recommend?
We do sell stone sealers and cleaners. In your driveway, you're talking about pebbles that have been pressed into the concrete, right? They're not just loose like in this picture.
Correct, correct.
So they call that raised, anything that's small like this is going to be called an aggregate. And the driveways that have the pebbles thrown in them are called raised aggregate.
Raised, okay.
Raised aggregate. And depending on how well it's done, if you pressure wash it, it may or may not take some of those pebbles out. Hopefully it won't. Pressure washing is probably the easiest way to clean it. You don't want to put it on a real thin nozzle. Otherwise, like, is it mostly dirt or is it sort of green algae and stuff like that?
No, it's more just dirt. It's just dirty in spots.
Has it ever been pressure washed?
No.
Okay.
I was kind of afraid to pressure wash it because I was afraid the pebbles might, you know, get washed out.
If it's done correctly, they shouldn't, because the pebbles are put in while the concrete is still wet when it's being poured. The pebbles are put on top. And basically they take a hose or something and spray it so that you only see the top of the pebbles. And those pebbles should be locked into that concrete. Very old driveways, sometimes you'll have some cracking and that makes it more difficult and things could loosen up. But otherwise, you could definitely do pressure washing.
And a specific cleaning product?
We have, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Let's see if it's on here.
Linda Bass, if you get in touch with me, I can help you with that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this doesn't show up, but we have different sealers and cleaners for different purposes. And yes, we do have one that's good for dirt, or there's some that are good for oil. Do you have oil stains on it?
Probably. I mean, the car's parked there.
Yeah.
I'm not always, but you know, they have in the past. So, but that's very helpful. I'm definitely going to go and visit you for sure.
The woman that had that that comment about a product, do you want to share what that is? You got to unmute.
You need
I
to
think
unmute yourself.
Sue said something.
I said Snowcap works great. I live in Villamar and we have tons, all the driveways are like that. And Snowcap works really well with the pebbled concrete.
I forgot about Snowcap, and that is a really good answer. That can be less expensive than a more, costly cleaner.
Yeah, it was funny. We hired our landscaper for the neighborhood, the HOA, to get rid of some of the water stains and the iron stains, and their special detergent thing didn't work very well, and people complained, and we had to show them about Snowcap. So
yeah, my yard manager, he likes to use that on some of our displays, and he's had really good luck with it.
yeah, it's amazing stuff. It gets rid of the rust stains on your brick houses too. I mean,
Okay, great. And what
toilet bowls.
is it, a powder or you mix it up in water?
You mix it with water. They're little cans, and they come in a pack of 4, I think, to a box.
How do you
Right.
apply it?
How do you,
Apply it, Lily?
well, you can get us, one of those spray mixer things.
Okay.
But then there's our neighbor who was demonstrating to the HOA guy, the landscaper, he just put it in a watering can and sprinkled it throughout his driveway. And then took a hose and washed it off after.
You think?
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Whatever works.
Thank you.
We have a few more questions in the chat, Nina. One of them is there a minimum amount of riverbed type stone that you need to order in order to have it delivered?
Okay. We don't have a minimum. The smallest amount that we can actually measure is a half a cubic yard. And so we can deliver half a cubic yard up to, with that kind of weight, we can usually take about 9 tons or full cubic yards. Either way you go, we charge the same amount for delivery. So it doesn't matter if you're buying more or less, the delivery is going to be the same. But I always encourage people, if you're going to buy it and you're going to pay for delivery, get a little extra, because you don't want to have to come back and pay for a second delivery.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And someone else wants to know if you sell arbors.
I wished I could find some good arbors. I have looked for 22 years, and what I have found is that the good ones are very expensive. And other than those ones that are good and very expensive and well-made and sturdy, so that if you start growing vines on them, they don't fall down and rust out in a few years. Other than that, it's very hard to find any that are kind of middle of the road or less expensive that will last. So I don't. I have referred people to carpenters that build arbors, but there's one company that I do sell. I only have one arbor in stock, and they're sort of middle of the road, but the best arbors are going to be really expensive. You just want to make sure that it's sturdy, because you put a lot of work into putting up the arbor and getting the vines to grow and all that. And it's just so frustrating when it falls apart. And because we're in a saltwater environment here at the beach, anything that's metal is going to rust unless it's powder coated.
I have a guy who built an arbor for us and did a great job. I'll email that information to all of you, and if you want, you can come on over and see mine. And he did a fabulous job, and I don't think anything is going to take this out, hurricanes or jumping baboons or anything. I think it's there. Another question, Nina, you talked about when one could do it oneself and when one should hire a professional. How do you draw those lines?
A lot of times it's about the weight of the material. So for instance, this was featured in our newsletter one month, and we do it yourself awards. So this was a gentleman whose wife was at that time the president of the Cape Fear Garden Club. And she wanted a pathway redone. And so we helped her do the estimate, and he was determined that he was going to do the job himself and not hire anyone else. So we helped him through figuring out what kind of material he would need and how much of it he would need. Again, what he would need for the joint material and the border material, what things to go under and what things to go in between the stone. This is our delivery truck, where we can take pallets of stone and also pallets of loose pebbles and deliver them at the same time with the forklift. So that's what we did with this one. And basically this is his load, where we've got the gravel in here that he used as an underlayment, which is this one right here. It's just a little tiny 3/8 inch pebble. And then what he used for the joints. You can see that as we come down on here. So this is the before. He had some old brick there that they dug up. And then really it was about having somebody with a strong back. So his son did help him, and they did put in the edging, because otherwise this bed would have just fallen down onto whatever they put there. This is when he put down the base material and leveled it out. And then the fun part is it's a puzzle if you use the irregular stone to figure out where you're going to put the pieces. He laid them and got them level. And then he put in the joint material. This is a baby, it's called River Jacks. It's a multicolor pebble. And so these are the materials that he used, which we can help you figure out how much you need. So like in this case, it really does have to do with how strong your back is and how much willpower you have. So this is what Bob says when he finishes the project. He said, "I'm slow like the proverbial turtle, but I finished the race." And when Rebecca was really happy with it. So this is an example of something he did have one of his adult sons help. So that cheated a little bit, but it really depends on how many people you have with strength, because a lot of the material is heavy. But certainly you can put down mulch with yourself. Some people that I know that have done little dry stack borders by themselves, we can deliver that material and then you stack it up. So it just depends on your level of ambition and how strong you are.
Okay, that's an interesting, many years ago in my former life, I decided I wanted to build a ruin. And my husband and his friend calculated how much stone I needed in order to do that. And the bottom line was that it wasn't going to happen anyway, in any shape or any form in my lifetime. So I've given that one up. Something else, Nina, that you didn't mention that I know from my visits to the Stone Garden, you have some wonderful statuary and things like that also available, not just fountains, but figures. I found a wonderful turtle. Maybe if you just talk a little bit about that aspect.
Absolutely. So remember when the tree fell in the storm and it devastated everything in my backyard, including a bird bath and a bench. I couldn't find everything in one place that I wanted to put it back together. And so we do sell different garden art pieces, from unusual things like gargoyles to different animals. All different sizes. Turtles are probably our most popular. We just did a big bunny display for Easter. We also have a spiritual section, and we do carry all different types of pedestals, benches. This is one of our good sellers. It's actually a cast iron that's been powder coated. We have gliders and love seats and regular benches. So yeah, we do carry what we call garden accents or accessories. Thank you for mentioning that.
Do we have any other questions? No, I think that you're probably going to get some visitors pretty soon, Nina. And I want to thank you so much for talking to us today. The Stone Garden is a marvelous place. You've done a tremendous job in the last 22 years. And we appreciate your sharing all of that with us. I'm sure that some projects are going to be starting up soon.
Good, and I do have garden clubs that come and they do a tour, and I'm happy to do that anytime as well, give you a guided tour through the Stone Yard, or just come anytime. We're open 6 days a week. The only day we're closed is Sundays.
Did you hear that, Lily, about the tour? Lily is our program chair, so she
I did. That's
she arranges
exciting.
those kind of things for us. Well, thank you again, Nina, and I'm sure many of us will see you at the Stone Store very soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Nina.
much.
So much, Nina. This was fabulous.
I
Virtual
appreciate
applause.
it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Oh, and Sally's giving you props too.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.